everyone, Vanessa here, alcoholic. My sobriety date's October 8th, 2017, and today I want to talk to you about the four absolutes. My life lately has been a little bit chaotic because my work life, my professional life, my full-time job has been very chaotic. And I actually enjoy what I do. I do find a sense of purpose and fulfillment in it, but it is always a little bit demanding on me as far as where I know my limitations are as a human and where my skill set is and things that I should be improving upon that I'm just not learning fast enough. And so it can really trigger a lot of feelings of inferiority or unworthiness and just walking around feeling dumb, like being totally honest. And something that I notice that when that starts to happen is I get really self-involved and I start really thinking a lot about myself. And it's less me thinking about how I can contribute to those people around me and how am I helping other people around me. And thankfully for me, I do have sponsees that I'm working with and have a pretty solid community of people who I can chat with about recovery. But ultimately, my YouTube channel has always been a place of service for me. It's somewhere where I can share my strength, experience, and hope in complete transparency, completely acknowledging that I don't always have the answers, but I hope that by people stumbling across my videos, the people who need to hear whatever I have to say, however I fumble through it, can also recognize maybe some of themselves in me and me and them or whatever, and that we can trudge through this together and end up on the other side of this intact and in peace and serenity. And something about that is just really being of service and dedicating myself to this. And so I want to make sure that this doesn't fall off my radar, even when I am swamped or even when I am stressed or when things aren't going well. I still want to continue to show up in full transparency and acknowledging that this is part of my service too. And it's never been necessarily a goal to amass thousands or tens of thousands of viewers or followers or whatever. It's just always been an act of service that I hope is helpful and that I know and I pray when publishing these videos that the people who are supposed to watch them end up watching them. And so I always feel very comforted by the comments that I receive, and the people who end up following me on my blog or social media, that's super just further confirmation for me, because that is the point of this, for us to remain connected and to find and encourage each other, especially as we embark on a lifestyle that is not really socially acceptable here in the United States, right? Practicing sobriety and complete abstinence from drugs and alcohol is not a really not a super popular mainstream idea, because we're constantly sold this idea that you should be under the influence of something. And really expanding my understanding of sobriety to not just be the drugs and alcohol, but also being sober in mind of political things. Even though I do talk a little bit of politics here, I'm not talking mainstream politics. There's not a lot of people who believe what I believe. We are a small but growing bunch. And all of it being deeply rooted in Christ and what we believe Jesus said in the red letters of the Bible, and really following that. Part of that is why I talk about God and Jesus, is because that is what my sobriety is rooted in. Even though you'll hear me talk about astrology or numerology or, I don't know, just aliens and things like that, like I do feel that there are, and this might be a little bit too much when you're just like, I'm just hungover trying to figure out why I keep drinking. I understand that. Just bear with me for a second. I do feel like there's a lot that our human eyes can't particularly see on this earth, but I do know that there's influences beyond all of that. And when we talk about tapping into a higher power to restore us to sanity from drugs and alcohol, that's that same power that I need to restore me from sanity from the violence and the greed and the jealousy and the gluttony that is going on in this world around me. So I need to remain sober of mind from all of those external man-made influences so that I can stay focused and enlightened and led by God, basically. And so I feel like this is partly where my spiritual journey has been leading me over the last year, is that even though this channel is going to remain me talking about my sobriety from drugs and alcohol and where it has led me and where I am now, the point of this is to always continue to grow, right? And I encourage every single one of you to continue to grow. The end goal is not just to stop drugs and alcohol and to never introduce another chemical like that into our bodies again. That is a big part of it. That is what helps us become more purposeful. That's more better contributors to this world that we were born into. And so it's very important that is like the first step. But what I want to encourage you is to remember that you also have a purpose here on this life, in this life on this earth, and that getting sober is only part of it. It only basically equips you to begin the search and the journey to really armor yourself up to complete the rest of what you are here to do. And everybody has different purposes. I can't even say some people are really fired up about certain causes in this world. And I just know that sometimes my heart really leads me to certain things. Some people will call it like a ministry, and some people are not. And I know that and some things I'm just really not, and I can't even be bothered to think about. And it's not that I don't care about them or I don't think that they're important. It's just that I don't feel that my skill set is necessarily aligned for those things. And a lot of things hurt my heart, and I think that they hurt God's heart, but it's not necessarily things that I feel anointed to handle. And so what I feel like I am particularly gifted in is connecting with people who feel broken, because I know what that feels like. And I know also that there is power in coming back from that, coming from feeling so dead to being alive and being revived, and having that love and that joy from God, come from God, and to really be grateful for it. And so that is really what I'm here for, and to also encourage other people to find that within themselves and within the people around them, and to really see our sobriety is just part of a larger just fabric of our existence, as Big Book says. So something that I use and that I have been straying from lately in whenever I'm feeling really, okay, so that's part of that part, right? But moving forward, I want to make a couple of videos. I want to make 4 actually, where we talk about the 4 absolutes. I've shared this. Anytime I share it, people are really excited about it, and it feels like everything makes sense. It's also a shortcut, if there is such a thing, from the 12 steps, because the 12 steps were actually created based off of the 4 absolutes from the Oxford group. Bill Wilson really liked this idea, and then he added like the doctor's opinion and the physical allergy that manifests from alcoholism, and then he wove that up and created the 12 steps out of these 4 absolutes. And so I want to talk about the 4 absolutes, because at the end of the day, if I'm feeling like I'm in resentment or I'm feeling really stressed, and like at work, for example, I have been feeling pretty inadequate and inferior and not well equipped. And then I get really resentful and I start feeling really bad about myself. And then I start taking out on people around me. And then I'm like, what am I doing? And am I living in accordance to the 4 absolutes? And I sure am not. Sure am not. And so it's important to me to stay aligned with the 4 absolutes. And if I'm seeing that I'm out of alignment with any of these, then I can kind of quickly jog through the 12 steps to be like, okay, maybe I need to do resentment, make amends, surrender this in prayer meditation, and really stay grounded in what I know from my experience of doing the 12 steps. So the 4 absolutes, I'm going to make videos on this for the next few weeks, are honesty, unselfishness, love, and purity. So these are basically these are the 4 pillars that we should basically build our existence upon. Is everything that I'm saying, is everything that I'm doing, is everything that I'm thinking, is everything that I'm feeling, is everything that I am supporting aligned with these 4 absolutes? Is everything honest? Am I being both honest with myself and with others in word, deed, and thoughts? Unselfishness. Am I willing? This means to be willing wherever possible to help others who need our help. Love. Thou shalt love the Lord with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. And thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. We can't forget the neighbor, okay? And who's the neighbor? As Bob Goff says, everybody, always. And purity of mind, body, and of purpose. So is it free of any selfish, self-centered motives, basically? And I love the questions when I'm just like if I'm thinking about doing something or saying something, or I've just written out really long, awful text and I'm about to send it off, I run through this checklist of things, right? Or if I'm about to make a big decision, if I want to quit a job, if I want to move, if I'm doing things, if I want to end a friendship or start a relationship or anything, these are the questions that I ask myself, and I would encourage you to do the same as well. Again, going back to honesty, these are based off of honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. Is it true or is it false? when I'm when I really want to like make a dig at somebody, or I want to send a lengthy text or voice note to somebody, I really need to stop and assess first, is what I'm saying true or is it false? Am I being deluded by my own fears, by my own self-interest and motives? And is this manipulation? Am I just getting my feelings hurt? Or is what I'm about to say true or is it false? Unselfishness. How will this affect the other fellow? Is it helpful even? Is what I'm about to say, is what I'm about to do even necessary? Is it just for my own gain? Is it just for my own comfort? Is this actually going to be helpful for others? Is it long term the better decision? This is like when you're like, I've thought about this like with ending relationships, for example, ending friendships. Am I ending this just because I don't like the way this person isn't living up to my expectations? Or am I ending this truly because there is no growth here, right? Am I just enabling a connection or an attachment that is neither healthy nor beneficial to the other person or for myself, and therefore it's actually not helpful, right? So it's actually selfish of me to continue to engage in it just out of comfort or ego or validation or whatever. Purity, is it right or is it wrong? I think that inherently, if we really do just sit with ourselves for like even 2 minutes and ponder if something is right or wrong, we will very quickly, if we open ourselves up to the possibility of getting our ego out of the way, we will be struck with the answer very quickly. Is it right or is it wrong? Is this something that is in alignment with the morals and with the values that I hold close to me, that I feel, that I experience in this world, that make me a vessel of God's will? Is this something that is right and wrong, or wrong in alignment or in relation to God's will? And then love. I love this question. Is it ugly or is it beautiful? What is love but beautiful, right? Even with, I don't know if you've ever seen like mismatched couples, like maybe where one person is like really physically attractive, but then the other person isn't, but then you see them connect and there's this beautiful just like connection between them, that you know that they get each other. And have you ever just been like, well, that's just beautiful? Or just, oh gosh, there was that really ugly fish recently died. It was like this really underwater, crazy looking thing, and one of God's creatures. And it just floated up from like depths of the hell of the sea. And then it like swam up to the brightness, to the ocean surface, where it wasn't really meant to ever be. But in seeing that, like it was really interesting to see humans' response to seeing this ugly creature and floating to the surface towards the light. And it was like, that's really beautiful, because even though it's not aesthetically something that's pleasing to us, what a what a miraculous, like interesting thing that we get to experience, that we see this very rare fish kind of float up to the surface, even though it was floating up to die, basically. Like we could find beauty in that still. And it was really interesting to see a lot of reels and stuff like this. Clearly, I'm not on TikTok, so I'm gonna keep like referring to Instagram reels. I'm sure TikTok went wild over this too, but it was really interesting because it really did touch a part of people's like psyche in this way that was just like, that's really beautiful. And it's because it touched something in every human that was very loving. It was still we found like an empathy for this creature that is unconventionally beautiful. So is it ugly, or is it beautiful? It's beautiful. What is ugly? Ugly is when we find greed, or when we find somebody prioritizing their own self-interest at the disturbance, or at the loss, or at the oppression, or at the violence towards others, right? That's ugly. Like we inherently know that's an ugly thing. And so it's really interesting. And is it ugly or is it beautiful according to God? What is God but just love? And when I am struggling, when I'm facing difficulty navigating my life, or have a lot of decisions that I have to make, or have to make a judgment call, I think about these four things. I'm like, okay, is what I'm about to do, is it honest? Is it unselfish? Is it pure? Or is it loving? And is it loving? It should be all four of those things. And sometimes sometimes the conclusion that you get to fulfill all four of those requirements is not the popular response. And it's really difficult, and it requires a lot of discernment and a lot of sitting in self and a lot of groundedness in that higher power to know that you're not making the popular decision, but you're making the one that is best aligned with your soul and with the purpose that God has you here for. I feel like if more people tapped into this and were willing to sacrifice their own ego or their own popularity in order to really find their validation and their peace and their serenity in God and in always doing right, that our world will be completely changed. And it's also very inspiring to see people act out of these four absolutes, right? Because it's maybe they're not the richest person or the most popular one, but that person is going to die without having any regrets, and they will hear the good work, my faithful servant. And that is something to consider as you go throughout your day. And it's something that I consider, and I actually do have it as my, oh, what did I do? I do have it as my phone screen because, oh gosh, I got all these notifications in just that time. If you could see that. I made this for myself. Wow, you really cannot see that. But basically, just to remind myself, because I do get really frazzled, I'm an easily irritated person, actually. And especially when I'm under a lot of stress, I can become very lash out. I know people who will internalize their stress and become very depressed. I externalize my stress and become very anxious. Just something to think about. I'm not sure if that'll be of interest to you, but I do feel like that's what I'm feeling called to talk about over the next few weeks. If you have any questions about the four absolutes or want more information on this, leave me a comment below. Is there one in particular that you have any questions about? Again, those four are honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. And these are for the Oxford group. So let me know if you have any questions on these, and I'm really looking forward to chatting more about these in the next couple weeks. Thanks everyone for being here, and I really love reading your comments. So let me know how you're doing. If you have a sobriety date, and go ahead and drop it in the comments. And if you've been watching these videos for a while but haven't subscribed, if I could just ask you to please subscribe and like these videos, it would really help a lot in hopefully reaching other people who could benefit from finding some hope, especially as they're struggling with navigating sobriety. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.